Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sam Saradava Nalalidaloka Anaya Karuna Gana Ganapam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaro Vrinda Praptasya Kalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Charanara Vrinda Vande Guru Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vadikramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Gita Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarja Nado Shri Juktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Juktasya Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satvana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Kridvaiva Triptan Vajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Dabayara Param Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Danalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Pratikshana Danalalupasya Nikunja Yono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Joktir Apekshaniyam Nikunja Tatrati daksha Otivalabhasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakshat Haridena Shamasta Shashrain Ruktas Tathava Vyataiva Sadhuvin Sakshat Haridena Pinto Praborja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasadam Bhagavat Prasadam Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Jayam Stubham Tasya Yasatri Sanyam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasatri Sanyam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatadesha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Nityananda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Yaraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah. Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govindaram Srimadhusudam. Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattaraguna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman. Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Prahlad Maharaj. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Jayam Vishwapara Paramahansa Prabhupada Suttara Sarasisha Maharaj. His Divine Grace, Abhajaravinda Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siromani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gaurya Guru Vargapati Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Satgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind Ki Jai. Prem se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavind Ki Jai. Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Ram Ki Jai. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Abhirvavatiti Maho Mahotsava Ki Jai. Kaliyuga Pavana Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Premanama Sankirtane Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinanda Nishman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaura Hari Mahavarana Avatar Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Juga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Brihabdanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopna Radha Kun Samakun Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vraja Bhumi Vrindavan Maturdham Ki Jai. Their Lordship Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Paramakaruna Shri Shri Gaur Nikai Dai Ki Jai. Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Devi. Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karishingare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Sitaram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman Ki Jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Mati Radharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Nitai Gauradi Pramanande. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hari. Did you want to sing? Vishnu?
Namaste Narashinhaya Prahlada Lada Daine
Prahlada Lada Daine
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha
Jaya Jata Jata Dale Jata Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Krishna Seva Pavam Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavam Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavam Eya Vilasi. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah.
Je tomara saranala tara vancha purna hai.
Je tomara saranala tara vancha purna.
Kripa kori karo tare Vrindavanavasi.
Tum kripa kore Krishna das ko eye namoro.
Sri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Namase.
Sri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Namase. Sri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Namase. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo. Yani Kani Japa Pani Brahmatyadi Kani Ja Kani Kani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Japa Pani Brahma Atyade Kanisha Tane Tane Prana Santi Pradachina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Japa Pani Brahmatyadi Kani Ja Kani Kani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Japa Pani Brahmatyadi Kani Ja Kani Kani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Japa Pani Brahmatyadi Kani Ja Kani Kani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Japa Pani Brahmatyadi Kani Ja Kani Kani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, 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 Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani. Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi. Jaya Brinda Devi, Brinda Devi, Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Brinda Devi Tulsi Maharani की जय, जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfill, bestow your mercy upon him, make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire to you to bring the business of Vrindavan. Thus within my vision, we always behold the beautiful past of the Radha and Krishna. I dare you to make me forward now with the angels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of voice my service and make me your own servant. Please go forward and my Lord and Savior Krishna. May I always sing aloud, Shri Radha Govind, Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Devi Ki. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Ki Jai. Ejo Gadaya Gira Ulakai Chitam Bako Kada Tabanama Grahane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nimeshena Chakshusakam Sanitam Sanyaitam Jagatsavam Govinda Viravidam Asli Shabaka Daratam Pinastumam Adarshanath Narmahatam Karautuvam Tata Tata Babidada Tulam Pato Matranatas Sevana Para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Ki Jai. Namo Bhagavate Krishna. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings And thus we have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion service, birth after birth. O son of Maharajananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs on my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years and more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, but he is my worshipful Lord, unconditionally.
Shri Chaitanya Sukhastakam Ki Jai.
There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows.
1. The blasphemy of devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord.
2.
To consider the names of demigods, like Lord Shiva, or Lord Brahma, to be equal to and independent names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master.
4.
The blasphemy of Vedic literature, or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version.
5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, which is offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities or karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
And 10.
To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard these sins and offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuttis Patapata. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmad Yasya Yato Nivyad Itaratas Chartesu Avigyaswarat.
Janmad Yasya Yato Chartesu Avigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimaya Yatrachi Sargomisha.
Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatrati Sargomisha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
O all-pervading personality of
I offer
God,
my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth
and the primeval cause of all causes,
and the primeval cause of all causes,
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction to manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is she only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water,
of water seen by fire, or land seen by water,
only because of him do the material universes,
only because of him do the material universe,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who
Krishna,
is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in his transcendental abode,
which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravotcha
Dharma pujita kaitavutra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam
paramo nirmasaranam satam,
vedyam vastavam atra vastu
Vedyam vastavam astra vastu,
shivadam tapa trayon mulanam
Shivadam taputrayam,
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim Vaparir Ishwaraha
Kim va paririshvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra
Sadyurudya varudya ditra,
Kriti Bihi Sususabhistakshana,
Pritibhi shushu shubhistatyana,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in
The
heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of
Such
all.
truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As
scripture?
soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukumakad amrita dravya samyatam,
Sukamakhadam ritadrava sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam,
muhur aho raska bhuvi bhavakaha.
Muhura horasika bhuvi bhavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit of the desired tree of the very
It
glory.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishukadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more
Although
tasteful.
its nectar and juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including the greatest soul.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shimbatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantak Stohi Abhadrani,
Yantastu Hiya Bhadrani,
Vidunoti Suhitsatam,
Vidunati Surim Satam,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
to hear about Krishna from Vedic
or
literature,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from me directly from Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts as a best-wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
acts as the best wishing friend and purifies the devotees who constantly engage in hearing.
Nasta presu bhadresu
Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata sevaya
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhagavati uttama sloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhakti bhavati nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental
As
knowledge.
he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhavo
Tada rajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
kamalobhadayascha
cheta etayaranavidam
cheta itarana vidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
stitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the modes of passion and ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manas
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
bhagavad bhakti yogata
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
bhagavad tattva jnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
mukta sangasya jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in the position of purity,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the sense of God.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidaya granti
chidyante sarvasamsaya
chidyante sarvasamshaya
siyante chasya karmani
chidyante chasya kamani
drista evatmanishware.
drusti evatmanishvari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the heart not of material affection,
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart not of material affection,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of assumption of samadhi,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1. Not quite sure. I think we're on number 4. Anybody know? Okay. I think we did 1, 2, 3. Dehapatya kalachadisu
Deyapatya kalatradishu
atmasanyesu asatsvapi
admashani sasatapi
tesam pramato nidhanam
desham pramato nidhanam
pasyan apina pasyati.
pasyanapi na prasati.
Translation. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This material world is called the world of death. Every living being, beginning from Brahma, whose duration of life is some thousands of millions of years, down to the germs who live for a few seconds only, is struggling for existence. Therefore, this life is a sort of fight with material nature which imposes its death upon all. In the human form of life, a living being is compared enough to come to is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence. But being too attached to family members, society, country, etc., he wants to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. Although he is sufficiently experienced in the matter by dint of past experience and previous examples of his deceased predecessors, he does not see that the so-called fighting soldiers, like the children, relatives, society members, and countrymen, are all fallible in the great struggle. One should examine the fact that his father or his father's father has already died, and that he himself is therefore also sure to die, and similarly, his children, who are the would-be fathers of their children, will also die in due course. No one will survive in this struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it. Yet the foolish people still suggest that in the future they'll be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. This material world exists only as a dream due to our attachment to it. Otherwise, the living soul is always different from the material nature. The great ocean of material nature is tossing with the waves of time, and the so-called living conditions are something like foaming bubbles, which appear before us as bodily self. Wife, children, society, countrymen, etc. Due to a lack of knowledge of self, we become victimized by the force of ignorance and thus spoil the valuable energy of human life in a vain search after permanent living conditions, which are impossible in this material world. Our friends, relatives, and so-called wives and children are not only fallible, but also bewildered by the outward glamour of material existence. As such, they cannot save us. Still, we think that we are safe within the orbit of family, society, or country. The whole materialistic advancement of human civilization is like the decoration of a dead body. Everyone is a dead body, flapping only for a few days, and yet all the energy of human life is being wasted in the decoration of this dead body. Sukadeva Goswami is pointing out the duty of the human being after showing the actual position of bewildered human activities. Persons who are devoid of the knowledge of Atma Tattva are misguided, but those who are devotees of the Lord and have perfect realization of transcendental knowledge are not bewildered. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Haribol. Yes. That's all? Okay. Okay, well, then, so we'll do text 3. Nidraya hridaya naktam
Nidraya Riyati Naktam
Vivayena Chavavaya
Vivayena Chavavaya
Diva Charte Hayarajan
Diva Chati Hayarajan
Kutumba Paranenava.
Tumba Paranenava.
Translation: the lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night, either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The present human civilization is primarily based on the principles of sleeping and sex indulgence at night, and earning money in the day and spending the same for family maintenance. Such a form of human civilization is condemned by the Bhagavata school. Because human life is a combination of matter and spirit, soul, The whole process of Vedic knowledge is directed at liberating the spirits from the contamination of matter. The knowledge concerning this is called Atma Tattva. Those men who are too materialistic are unaware of this knowledge and are more inclined to economic development for material enjoyment. Such materialistic men are called karmis or fruitive laborers, and they are allowed regulated economic development or association of women. Those men who are too materialistic are unaware of this knowledge and are more inclined to economic development for material enjoyment. Such materialistic men are called karmis or fruitive laborers, and they are allowed regulated economic development or association of women for sex indulgence. Those who are above the karmis, that is, the jnanis, yogis, and devotees, are strictly prohibited from sex indulgence. The karmis are more or less devoid of Atma Tattva knowledge, and as such, their life is spent without spiritual profit. The human life is not meant for hard labor for economic development, nor is it meant for sex indulgence like that of the cats and dogs. It is specially meant for making a solution to the problems of material life and the miseries thereof. So the karmis waste their valuable human life by sleeping and sex indulgence at night, and by laboring hard in the daytime to accumulate wealth. And after doing so, they try to improve the standard of materialistic life. The materialistic way of life is described herein in a nutshell, and how foolishly men waste the boon of human life is described as follows. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So here we see in many different places Prabhupada is trying to explain the purpose of Vedic knowledge. What is the purpose of Vedic knowledge? He says it's directed to liberating the spirit soul from the contamination of matter. So the whole process of how we've become contaminated by the material nature is analyzed in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, with many, many different examples given, such as the whole history of what's the name of that person? Anyway, I'll come back to that. So, the whole dilemma of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is a struggle between the mundane concept of life and the spiritual concept of life. So, to show how difficult it is to convince a person of the spiritual concept of life, Krishna has to speak the entire Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, point by point, chapter by chapter. Now, of course, it only took a half an hour to 1 hour for Krishna to explain Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. When we recite Bhagavad Gita, we can't do it in less than 2.5 hours. So just imagine the speed at which Krishna explained this, and the fact that Arjuna understood it is amazing. It just shows how smart Arjuna was. And they're in a very stressful position. It's in the middle of a battlefield right before it's going to begin. But yet Arjuna is asking all these significant questions, and Krishna is answering them. And Prabhupada said it didn't last more. It lasted between a half an hour and 1 hour. Huh? Oh, where did you see 45 minutes? Okay.
I also heard that, yeah, 45 minutes.
Well, I have a lecture, Prabhupada, he says a half an hour. Yeah. In other places, he says 1 hour. And maybe he says 45 minutes also. So the speed of the communication is incredible, and the ability of Arjuna to understand is incredible. In fact, he's also asking questions. So when we read or recite just the verses, not even the purports, it takes 2.5 hours. Sometimes 3 hours, depending how fast you can go. So we can see the exceptional qualifications of Arjuna and of course Krishna. So to understand how we become entangled in the material world is a big subject. And to understand how we can get rid of this entanglement is an even bigger subject. But basically, the recommendation that we've gone over many times is to hear the glories of the Lord. Now, most of the time we focus on, how we became entangled and all the negative points about Kali Yuga. But focusing more or refocusing more on hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord is the real solution. So this morning, I'm going to read from chapter 82 in the Krishna book. And it's Lord Krishna and Balaram meet the inhabitants of Vrindavana. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balaram were living peacefully in their great city of Dwarka, there was the rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa, or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swarga. Well, that's, like all the time in Seattle during the winter, right? So, by astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra known as Samanta Panchaka. The Samanta Panchaka pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parasurama performed great sacrifices there for killing all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. When Lord Parasurama killed all the Kshatriyas, their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parasuram dug 5 big lakes at Samanta Panchaka and filled them with this blood. Lord Parasurama is Vishnu Tattva. As stated in the Ishopanishad, Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet, although Lord Parasuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifices at Samanta Panchaka to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parasurama established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parasurama considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more culpable are we for such abominable, unsanctioned acts? Thus, from time immemorial, the killing of living entities is prohibited all over the world. Taking advantage, well, you can see, Prabhupada says in the Ten Commandments, one of them is, "Thou shalt not kill." And Prabhupada gives a short explanation of that. He says, if they put that in there, in the Ten Commandments, that means that people were killing too much at that time. And that was in what's called today the Middle East. So, do you think that the same thing is true today, that people are killing too much? Yes. They're killing so many living entities, not only human beings. In fact, the ability to kill has improved. They can kill many more people now with all the weapons that they have, and it's going on regularly. Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all important persons from all parts of Bharatvarsha visited the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elderly persons were Akrura, Vasudeva, and Ugrasena, and amongst the younger generation were Gada, Pradumna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty who had come there with a view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Pradumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Sukha, Sharana, and Sarana, remained at Dwarka to protect the city. So even 5,000 years ago, there was necessity of having Kshatriyas, and there was the need to protect the holy city like Dwarka, and where there were so many women and children and a large population. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful, yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing, and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, which resembled the airplanes of the demigods, and which were pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. Some Yadus rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like the clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men whose features resembled those of the Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods of heaven. After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously with self-control as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks. After the eclipse, all the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their baths in the lakes created by Lord Parashurama. Then they sumptuously fed the Brahmanas with first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food, and the other is called cooked food. Raw food does not indicate raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapatis, dal, rice, and ordinary vegetables are called raw foods, as are fruits and salads. But puris, kachoris, samosas, sweet balls, and so on are called cooked foods. All the Brahmanas invited on that occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food. The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resembled the ritualistic ceremonies performed by the karmis. When a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony his ambition is sense gratification. Good position, good wife, good house, good children, or good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer Krishna perpetual devotion with faith. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or in feeding the Brahmanas, in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipable Lord was Krishna and no one else. After the brahmanas are fed, it is the custom for the host, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shady trees, and when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. There were rulers of Matsya province, Usinara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha province, Kuru province, Sanjay province, Kamboja province, Kekaya province, Madras province, Kunti province, Anarta province, Kerala province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers began to oppose parties, and some were friends. But above all, the visitors from Vrindavana were the most important. The residents of Vrindavana, headed by Nanda Maharaja, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balarama. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balaram. The inhabitants of Vrindavan were well-wishers and intimate friends of the Yadu dynasty. This meeting of the two parties, after a long separation, was a very touching incident. All the Yadus and the residents of Vrindavan felt such great pleasure in meeting and talking together that it was a unique scene. Meeting after long separation, they were all jubilant, their hearts throbbed, and their faces appeared like freshly bloomed lotus flowers. Drops of tears fell from their eyes, the hair on their bodies stood on end, and because of their extreme ecstasy, they were temporarily speechless. In other words, they dove into the ocean of happiness. While the men were meeting in that way, the women also met one another in the same manner. They embraced one another in great friendship, smiling very mildly, and looked at one another with much affection. When they were embracing one another in their arms, the saffron and curcuma spread on their breasts was exchanged from one person to another, and they all felt heavenly ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glided down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisances to the elders, and the elders were offering obeisances, were offering their blessings to the juniors. And the elders were offering their blessings to the juniors. Thus they welcomed one another and asked after one another's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talk was only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were connected with Lord Krishna's pastimes in this world, and as such, Krishna was the center of all their activities. Whatever activities they performed, social, political, political, religious, or conventional, were transcendental. The real elevation of human life rests on knowledge and renunciation. As stated in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherds of Vrindavana had their minds fixed on Krishna. That is a symptom of perfect knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Knowledge and renunciation, therefore, do not mean dry speculation and dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna. That's what Yukta Vairagya means, speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna. In this meeting at Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vasudeva, who were sister and brother, met after a long separation, along with their respective sons and daughters-in-law, children, and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their past miseries. Kunti Devi especially addressed her brother Vasudeva as follows: "My dear brother, I am very unfortunate because not one of my desires has ever been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it happen that although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire from me as to how I was passing my days in a distressed condition of life? It appears that Kunti Devi, that's the end of the quote. Now, Prabhupada explains, it appears that Kunti Devi was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished with her sons through the mischievous plans of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, my dear brother, I can understand that when providence goes against someone, even one's nearest relatives forget him. In such a condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget you, will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not excuse you. Vasudeva replied to his sister, my dear sister, do not be sorry, and do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we are all only toys in the hands of providence. Providence means not the state providence, but it means it's the will of God. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is under his control only that all kinds of fruitive actions and their reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his persecutions we scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our places by the grace of God. After this conversation, Vasudeva and Ugrasena received the kings who came to see them, and they warmly welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on that spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follows: Bhismadeva, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Gandhari, along with her sons. She had 100 sons. King Yudhishthira, along with his wife, and the Pandavas with their sons. King Yudhishthira, along with his wife, and the Pandavas along with Kunti, as well as Sanjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoja, Virata, Bhismaka, King Nagnajit, Purujit, Drupada, Salya, Drishtaketu, and the king of Kashi, Dharmagosa, Vishalaksha, and the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, and the king of Kekaya, Yudamanyu, Susarma, Balika, along with his sons, and many other rulers subordinate to King Yudhishthira. When the visitors saw Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, they were fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Lord Balarama and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by them, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balarama. Because Ugrasena was the king of the Bhojas, he was considered the chief Yadu, and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him. Your Majesty, Ugrasena, king of the Bhojas, factually the Yadus are the only persons within the world who are perfect in all respects. All glories unto you. All glories unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is that you always see Lord Krishna, who is sought by many mystic yogis undergoing severe austerities and penances for great numbers of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment. All the Vedic hymns glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because of its being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic scriptures are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna and the message of his pastimes are always purifying. By the influence of time and circumstances, all the opulences of this world were almost completely wiped out But since Krishna has appeared on this planet, all auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all the ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you are related with the Yadu dynasty by matrimonial relationship and by blood relationship also. As a result, you are constantly associating with Lord Krishna, and you have no difficulty in seeing him or touching him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The Yadus appear to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to be the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental loving position of liberation and Brahman existence. When Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, and that all the members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherd men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts. And all of the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balarama and Lord Krishna. When the cowherd men of Vrindavana arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavana, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vrindavana residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vasudeva saw Nanda Maharaj, Vasudeva jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him very affectionately. Vasudeva began to narrate his own past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen, Yasoda. After Krishna's birth, he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen, Yasoda, as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yasoda, and then they offered their respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yasoda, Lord Krishna and Balaram became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yasoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balarama, King Nanda and Yasoda had been merged in great distress for a very long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated. After this, Krishna's mother, Devaki, and Balarama's mother, Rohini, both embraced Mother Yasoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yasoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior toward us. When Krishna and Balarama were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as birds take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit. Actually, they are not our sons. They belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balaram. As long as they are under your care, they They had not even a pinch of difficulty under your protection. They were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position. The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others, and there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you. As far as the gopis of Vrindavana were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts through their eyes and embraced him to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were rapt with ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated the embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with Mother Yasoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini, but when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balaram and I left Vrindavana just to please our relatives and family members. Thus, we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us, although we had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do not dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you. Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously? After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires." Well, he's talking about himself, but he's talking in the third person. He causes the intermingling of different persons and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust, or broken pieces of cotton, and after the strong wind subsides, all the cloud particles of dust and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects we see are different manifestations of his energy. By his supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on his will. Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotion for me certainly at the end goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation. My dear Gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. It is nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire, and sky. It is always of the same physical composition, whether it is beginning during its existence or after its annihilation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, no different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. While it remains, it is the same in composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but a different manifestation of my energy. And because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything. In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the 5 elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his imprisonment in material existence. As the supreme absolute truth, I am transcendental to the living entity as well as to his material embodiment. The two energies, material and spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that instead of being afflicted, you try to accept everything with philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another. This important instruction by Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he is present everywhere in his impersonal feature. Everything exists in him, but still he is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy, and because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from him. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness person, but fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separate from Krishna, then he can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and being thus implicated in material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material existence. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material nature, he falsely thinks that he is the all in all and the supreme enjoyer. If the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa Vigraha, or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple, is exactly the same Satchitananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia, and the food offered to the deity are all not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus, under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible even in this material existence. The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called jiva kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from the jiva kosha, imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egotism. He utilizes everything for Krishna's service and is not at any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower, which is the birth site of Brahma, the creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remains always a mystery even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all, even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. However, the conditioned soul, fallen in the dark well of this material existence, can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus, his deliverance is guaranteed." The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction." The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretend to be entangled in household affairs in Vrindavana because of their separation from Krishna. We might have asked them to return with him to his capital city, Dwarka, but the inhabitants of Vrindavana, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavana and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavana. This transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. The Rath Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavana. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vrindavana atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavana, and the gopis and other residents of Vrindavana remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 82nd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna and Balarama meet the inhabitants of Vrindavana. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So it says here, this is the takeaway from this, the transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. So this is the homework for tomorrow. You can read Chaitanya Charitamrita chapter Adi Leela chapter 4, where it explains in depth the transcendental emotional existence of the gopis. Haribol. Does anybody do their homework? Yes, go ahead. Come let Mataji come. Yeah.
Question of yesterday's homework was
Say louder.
the question of yesterday's homework was, why did Lord Nityananda tell Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami to leave his brother's house and go to Vrindavan?
Yes.
So the Lord is influenced by his devotees and he gives great importance to even the slightest display of attachment, bestowing upon them all that they desire. So Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami writes that by taking the part of Nityananda Prabhu's associate and chastising his brother, he won the blessings of Nityananda Prabhu himself. So Nityananda Prabhu came to him in a dream and ordered him to go to Vrindavan. "O Krishnadas, have no fear, go to Vrindavan, for there you will attain all things." After saying this, he indicated the way to Vrindavan by waving his hand and then disappeared with his associates. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita 1, Adilila 5.195. By Lord Nityananda's mercy, Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami attained the shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa, Sanatana, and Raghunath Das Goswami in Vrindavan. And he found the refugee of Sri Swarupa Damodara. By Lord Nityananda's mercy, he attained Sri Radha Govinda. Lord Nityananda showed him Sri Madana Mohana. So Krishna and gave him Sri Madana Mohana as his Lord and Master. Mahaprabhu's Vrindavan devotees approached Krishnadas Kaviraj asking him to write down a full version of these pastimes, for if it were not done, they would be forgotten. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami then went to the deity of Madana Mohana and asked him for permission to do as he had been asked. In front of all the prominent contemporary members of the Gaudiya community in Vrindavan, the garland fell from Madana Mohana's neck. This was taken by all who were present as a sign of the Lord's approval, and they let out a joyous cheer. Joyfully taking the garland as a symbol of the deity's wishes, Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami began to write his biography of the Lord. Thus he has written in great humility the Chaitanya Charitamrita as the instructions by Lord Nityananda and guided by Lord Nityananda. So this was the mission of, the instruction of Lord Nityananda, so that he can go to Vrindavan and under the guidance of all the Goswamis, he can write the Chaitanya Charitamrita so that we can read about the pastimes.
Very good. Very good. Did you write anything different? Okay. Speak loudly into the microphone.
So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj had won the blessing and mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu by chastising his brother, who was disrespectful toward the Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda's associate Meenakhet and Ramdas. Krishnadas Kaviraj had strong faith in Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's brother had strong faith in Mahaprabhu, but had lacked faith in Nityananda Prabhu, and being disrespectful to the associate of Meenakhet Ramdas, who became angry and broke the flute and left. With the result of this curse was the Krishnadas brother was doomed, fell down from the path of bhakti, even to Mahaprabhu, which he had earlier had the strong faith. Completely losing any devotional attitude whatsoever, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, upon chastising his brother, however, took the side of Nityananda Prabhu's associate Meenakhet and Ramdas and had rebuked his brother. By doing so, he won the blessings of Lord Nityananda with good qualities. Now the point here is, at that night, like Mataji mentioned, Lord Nityananda came in the dream in the town, the village called Jamadpur, where he lived with his brother, and the Lord ordered Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to go to Vrindavan. In the dream, he saw such opulence of Lord Nityananda Swarupa. His wonderful form, qualities, and pastime are all transcendental. He was overwhelmed with transcendental ecstasy, not knowing anything else. Then Lord Nityananda smiled and spoke as follows: "Don't be afraid, O Krishnadas. Have no fear, go to Vrindavan, for there you will attain all things," meaning everything that's worth having. That is, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, he attained the shelter in transcendental abode of Vrindavan, shelter of Goswamis, attained Sri Radha and Krishna. After the dream was broken, that very second, he started for Vrindavan. So that much you mentioned? Okay. It is for this reason that Kaviraj Goswami begins each chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita with invocation prayers to Mahaprabhu and his associates like Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, and concludes each chapter with a prayer for the service to the feet of Rupa and Raghunath Goswami. He thus showed how important it is to avoid any disrespect or offense to the Vaishnavas.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the main point, that living in a household that respects Lord Chaitanya but doesn't respect Lord Nityananda, and it's the key verse. You'll see it if you read carefully. It says it's better to be disrespectful to both than to respect one and disrespect another. So, in other words, it's better to be blasphemous to both of them rather than, because then it's clear that they're demons. But to be respectful to one and disrespectful to the other, it's misleading because people see they have Aarti in the house, they're worshiping the deity, they're giving out prasadam, so it looks like they're bona fide, right? But underneath it all, below the facade, they're actually very vicious because they disrespect Lord Nityananda. So the key was, when you read the verse, if you look carefully at the text, it says it's better to be disrespectful to both than to be respectful to one and disrespectful to the other. You know? But anyway, everything you both said is correct. I mean, he goes there, and Lord Chaitanya's words are validated that you will find everything. So he gets the association of Goswamis, and then he gets the great, benediction to write the biography of Lord Chaitanya. So, Haribol. So you look at that verse up where it says, it's better to disrespect both of them than to respect one and disrespect the other. You see that?
I was typing in so I can look it.
Yeah, look it up. Yeah, okay. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhaksati Sadma Pandamui Savadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai Eva Vatoriya Jai Krishna Prati Oya Hoite Gurumukha Padma Vaya Chittite Koriya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Ese Utamagate Prasade Bure Sava Asa Shakshudan Dilaje Janme Janme Prabhu Se Divya Gyani De Prakasito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinashta Chate Degaye Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Jivana Shri Maha Prabhu Kora Doya Tehamuri Padachaya Devyas Kusikhi Bhuvana Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararaja Kachasta Tarasatara Shishi Shimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotions. He is my Lord, from him ecstatic friend, body destroyed, the Vedic scriptures to us. Lord Master, O Master, be merciful, bless the shade of your famous place, our Lord. Take something with the scriptures. Save our Prabhupada. Namaste.